Welcome to our second video lesson on writing terrific sentences. We will be learning about sentence structure number 3 and 4 in this lesson, and you're going to want to take notes. So at the top of your page, write sentence structure notes number 3 and 4, and let's be ready to make our boring, simple sentences into interesting, informative, beautiful sentences. As always, we start with a simple sentence, which is the who or what and the action. So look at this picture. If you know who this is, write a sentence about him. Just a boring, simple sentence with a subject and a verb. And if you don't, make up a name. And so, write a simple sentence about this person, who or what, followed by an action. And again, if you don't know his name, just make up a name and write a sentence about what he's doing. Now take that simple sentence and expand it to a more interesting sentence. And in sentence structure lesson number 3, we're going to be adding a where group. The where group comes at the beginning of the sentence, and it obviously tells where the action of the rest of the sentence takes place. So the where group comes in the beginning of the sentence, and it often starts with one of the following words. You might like to put these words in your notes, because not only do they help you start a where group, they are really great ways to start a sentence. Above, across, against, along, alongside, among, around, at, before, behind, below, beneath, beside, between, beyond, by, down, from, in, inside, into, near, off, on, out, outside, over, past, through, to, towards, under, up, upon. And in elementary school, if you memorize the list of prepositions, you might see a lot of overlap, but this is not all of the prepositions. Many of them are prepositions, but not all of them. And these are just the words that help relate the stuff that comes after it to a location. Okay, so write a where group that starts with one of those magic words. Put the where group at the beginning of the sentence. Follow it with a comma, and then have your who or what and your action. We follow the where group with a comma because that where group grammatically is an introductory word or phrase, and so we're going to separate it from the rest of the sentence. Okay? So, write a where group, beginning with one of those magic words, follow it with a comma, and then add a who or what. And make sure you put all this stuff in your notes. If you need to pause the video, you can. And who is this? This is Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is a rock singer, but he's also folk. He kind of straddled those two genres of music. And he played in the 60s and the 70s. And he wrote some really amazing songs, but if you've ever heard Bob Dylan, he did not have a good singing voice, but he had a lot of soul. So here are my example sentences using a where group. In the studio, comma, Bob Dylan recorded Mr. Tambourine Man, and Mr. Tambourine Man is one of his famous songs. Notice the where group at the beginning. It starts with one of those magic words, and it's followed with a comma, and then I've got my who or what and my action. My second example sentence, upon the stage, comma, Dylan played the guitar and harmonica. Upon the stage is a where group because it tells where he played the guitar and harmonica. Okay, so sentence structure number 3 is a where group, and it makes a boring sentence more informative and interesting. All right, write another boring sentence about this person. If you know who he is, write about him. If not, you can make up a name. So write a boring sentence with just a who or a what plus an action. Now let's add a where group. And remember, the where group starts with one of these magic words. They should be in your notes by now. And it's followed with a comma. Right? And if you don't know who this is Muhammad Ali. And he is just about the most famous boxer of all time. He was born Cassius Clay, but he changed his name to Muhammad Ali. and he was very flamboyant. And he, you talk about athletes that talk smack. He was the smack talkingest athlete ever, and he had swagger, but he could pull it off because he was so good and he was so fast. All right, so here are my example sentences. Beside his trainer, comma, Muhammad Ali spoke to the reporters. So where did he speak to the reporters? Beside his trainer. Outside the ring, comma, Ali was even more loud and brash. Where was he more loud and brash? Outside the ring. So the sentence begins with a where group, and it's followed with a comma. All right, we're going to be starting sentence structure number 4, but first, let's look at this person, and let's write a simple sentence about him. It starts with the who or the what and the action. So this is just a boring, straightforward sentence, subject and a verb, but we'll be adding to it when we learn about our group. And again, if you don't know this person's name, make one up. Right, so the lesson for this sentence structure number 4 is to add a why group. And the why group, it usually begins with the word because, or the words so that, or it can start with to plus a verb. Grammatically, that's called an infinitive, but you don't need to know that right now. You just need to start with the word to, followed by a verb. The why group goes at the beginning of the sentence, and it's followed with a comma, because, again, it's introductory material that's set off with a comma. Okay, so it can start with the word because, so it's something like because he just ate. It starts with so that, like so that he could graduate. Or to plus a verb. Here are a couple examples. To win the race, or to escape capture. All of these explain why the rest of the sentence takes place. So when you finish that sentence, this little group will tell why that stuff takes place. And who is this? This is Langston Hughes, who is a really famous poet. And he wrote at a time called the Harlem Renaissance, when it was the beginning of jazz. And so lots of people were going to uptown in New York City to listen to jazz, but they were also eating there and spending money and supporting the artists. And so it wasn't just the jazz music that started to blossom, but also painting and writing. And so Langston Hughes is the most famous poet of the Harlem Renaissance. So I might have a boring sentence, but I'm going to add a why group to the beginning to make it more interesting and to also tell why it takes place. So here are my examples. To fight injustice, comma, Langston Hughes expressed himself in poetry. So why did he express himself? To fight injustice. And so that he could be part of the Harlem Renaissance, comma, Hughes moved to New York City. Why did he move? So that he could be part of the Harlem Renaissance. And here's one of his most famous poems. I really like it. They even named even used the third line as a movie title. So it's called A Dream Deferred. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? That's a good poem. I like that. Okay, I just wanted to share a little bit about why he's famous. Okay, let's write another example of a why group. We're going to start with a simple sentence about this person, who or what plus an action. And if you don't know her name, you can make one up. But then you're going to add a why group to the beginning. Remember that the why group begins with because, or so that, or to plus a verb. And that can be something like because she knew him, or so that she would survive, or to incite a riot, or to make money. Those are all phrases that tell why something happened. Okay, and here are some example sentences about Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe was a very famous artist in the early 20th century. And I've seen some of her older paintings in a museum when she lived in New York City, and they're and they're really pretty. But her best paintings happened after she moved to Nevada, or is it New Mexico? Anyway, she moved to the Southwest, and so she has a lot of paintings of desert scenes, especially with, if you ever see a painting in a museum with a big cow skull, that's her. And she also paints a lot of flowers. So here are my example sentences. Because she lived in the Southwest, comma, Georgia O'Keeffe often painted desert scenes. So why did she paint? Because she lived in the Southwest. And to capture the beauty of the flowers, comma, O'Keeffe used oil paints. Why did she use oil paints? To capture the beauty of the flowers. Now, one little thing, think about if the Y group came at the end. O'Keeffe used oil paints to capture the beauty of the flowers. That sentence is okay, but it sounds a lot more smart and interesting when the Y group moves to the front of the sentence and is followed with a comma. And here are a couple examples of two of her paintings. On the left is a Southwest one, and there's that cow skull, and then on the right is a flower. Okay, now try it out for yourself. Try a where group sentence and a Y group sentence, put them together, and notice how smart they sound.